And so they watched Franco Zeffirelli's 1960s something version of The Taming of the Shrew, starring Richard Burton and Elizabeth Taylor. Uh, Edgy said to, maybe I told you already, Edgy said to Violet, "Do you remember this?" And she said, "Oh yeah, I remember it. It was, people tended to. It was a marvelous work." And now, so both of them had seen it years ago, but Elaine, it was new to her, The Taming of the Shrew. And Elaine, well, they all thoroughly enjoyed it. Part of Violet felt that she shouldn't be enjoying this as much as she was, because after all, it was, well, you maybe better just look yourself. I mean, it was, in a sense, it was the beating down of a wife. But that's not right. And when they got to the end, well, I think I already mentioned that the dramatic speech at the end was the one that Elaine, was it Elaine, that said that she remembered that Vivian was supposed to memorize it. I think I told you that already. And and the word play in there, and none of it was lost on Elaine. She'd seen enough Shakespeare now, and reading Tennyson like she was, Idols of the King, she was getting a pretty good education in that kind of language. But Shakespeare's body humor, you might call it, and nowadays I think they might call it dirty or nasty or off color or something. Back then, Elaine was even figuring that out. That back then there was a whole different attitude toward a lot of it. What was it? He says, Petruchio says, or she says, Kate says, asses are meant to bear, and so are you. And Petruchio says, women are meant to bear, and so are you. And Kate says, not such a load as yours. And this wasn't lost on Elaine anymore. She was ready for that kind of humor. But I'm getting off on a tangent here. When they got to the end, normally that's the point where Elaine would give her review, but there was no need this time because Edgy was ready to talk all about this. He said, the last time that he'd gone to visit Wedge was teaching school at that time, and he was teaching his way through The Taming of the Shrew, not reading it, but just explaining it and having the kids watch the movie and stuff. And so Edgy and Wedge had quite a talk about this, and Wedge said he was so amazed always that the girls and the women, now and then there were parents or mothers that would sit in or on this class or for learning assistance. They loved it. And, it amazed Wedge because it was so, it seemed to be, what's the word, misogynist almost? And they said no, they loved it. And so Wedge and Edgy had quite a discussion about it, and he shared a little bit about it. He said he used to ask the students at the end, when he'd quiz them on it, he says, who do you think won that battle of the sexes at the end? There's no right answer. You just explain. Do you think Petruchio won, or do you think Kate won? And so to get the kids to write a little bit more of an answer, and they'd give their answer. And but I could go on and on about this. I'll give you a link where if you'd like to know more about this, or I forget in this particular genre that I'm experimenting with, I've got that option of giving you links, and you can take a look at this more if you want. But anyway, then Edgy said something that didn't go down so well. He said, when it comes down to it, at the end there, and Kate said she would be obedient to her husband, Edgy said, I think, this is Edgy now speaking, I think that since there's two in a marriage, two, And if both have completely different opinions, there's not a third party to settle it. So what do? Flip a coin, roll dice when they're two opposite and ideas. And Edgy said he thought in a case like that, I can hardly believe I'm saying this, and Wedgie knew he was going into dangerous territory. He said if it came down to that, he thought that a wife should go along with her husband's wish, if at all possible. You know, Violet almost sucked in her breath, maybe she did, to hear that very idea. And but Edgy said, someone's got to give in. And if it really is 50-50, he felt that the wife had to do that. Men were bigger, they were stronger, but he felt that women made up for it because they were much more beautiful and they were smarter. Well, that was going to be quite a discussion. And, you know, Violet just kind of shook her head and said, maybe we'll talk about this later. But anyway, they were all tired at this point. And Edgy thought to himself, maybe he shouldn't have said that. But they went to bed, and they all slept well that night. They all had plenty to think about from that Friday afternoon and evening.